Hey, stepmom, are you familiar with the term parental alienation? Sadly, a lot of blended families deal with it. It's a tough topic, but we are going to tackle it today. I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step-family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Today's subject, parental alienation, is a touchy one, and it unfortunately impacts a ton of blended families. Yours may be one of them. We're going to talk today about what it is, how to look for it and identify it, and what you as a stepmom can do about it. Parental alienation has been described since at least the 1940s, but the term was first coined in 1985 by Dr. Richard Gardner, who really focused in his research on how one parent could use the power of socialization, is what he called it, to turn a child against the other parent. He called this parental alienation syndrome. Although his use of the word syndrome was a little controversial, it has not been recognized by the medical or legal communities. Parental alienation syndrome is not usually admissible in custody hearings either. That being said, it absolutely exists. In his 1985 paper, Dr. Gardner said that parental alienation could be deliberate or unconsciously done by the alienating parent. He initially said that the mother was like 90% more likely to engage in this kind of behavior and most often be the alienator. But he later took that back and said both parents, had an equal shot at being alienators. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what he said. Dr. Gardner identified 8 symptoms that appear in a child that can indicate parental alienation is going on. I want to walk through these 8 things to look for if you suspect that alienation may be happening. But before I do, I'm going to say this a couple of times throughout today's episode because this is such a serious topic. I don't want you to go throwing around the term parental alienation willy-nilly. This is a serious matter, but if you suspect it might be happening, these 8 symptoms are certainly clues to take a look out for, right? So number 1, a campaign of, for lack of a better word, hatred against the targeted parent, meaning the child constantly criticizes them and most of the time unfairly. They don't have rationalizations for their criticisms. They don't have any kind of specific examples or justifications. It's basically the child criticizing a parent really severely and with no good cause. Now, no parent is perfect, right? Everybody loses their temper and all kids get mad at their parents at times. So just because a kid gets mad at their parents does not mean that parental alienation is going on. This is when they never have anything good to say about the parent. And number 2, which kind of ties in with number 1 a little bit, the child's feelings about the alienated parent are not mixed. They are all negative, and that parent has no redeeming qualities to be found. This is sometimes called lack of ambivalence. Number 3, the child claims the criticisms are all their own conclusions and are based on their own independent thinking. In reality, the alienating parent is usually programming the child with these ideas. And again, this can be done deliberately or unintentionally. Number 4, the child has unwavering support for the alienator, no matter what. Number 5, the child does not feel guilty at all about mistreating the alienated parent or hating the alienated parent. Number 6, the child uses terms and phrases that seem maybe more like adult language than they're capable of. And they use that language when they're talking about situations that either happened before their memory is really capable of going back to, or situations that just never happened. Number 7, the child's feelings of hatred towards the alienated parent expand. They go past that parent. They can include other family members like cousins or grandparents, people who, have nothing to do with any kind of dispute in the family. Now, as I said, and I want to be clear about this, if you notice one of these 8 things, it doesn't mean parental alienation is going on. You should not necessarily be trying to diagnose this, right? These are things to be aware of, things to look for. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but, things to talk to a therapist or a counselor about. So those are the 8 symptoms. They sound a little bit clinical, but I think, you may recognize some of that behavior if this is something that you've dealt with before. And, I want to repeat again that, parental alienation is not recognized in the medical manuals. It's not recognized in a legal context, like when you're going to court for custody issues. But that doesn't mean that it's not real, right? So outside of textbooks, what does this look like in reality? Well, the statements that the alienating parent makes to the kids can be mild or they can be severe. It's really anything aimed at distorting the child's perception of the other parent, whether they had a close relationship with that parent or not. For example, if a child is repeatedly told that, dad is a bad person, even if it's not true, the child may eventually refuse to talk to or see dad, or mom, as the case may be. So let's talk about a few circumstances in terms of how that may play out. So an alienator may talk about unnecessary details to the kids about the breakup of the family. For example, they may tell the kids or the child that, the other parent had an affair, whether that's true or not. This can make the child feel alienated themselves and can make them angry at a situation that really is between mom and dad. They may feel like the alienated parent chose their new spouse over them. That's also something that the alienating parent may tell them, but it's also something they may just feel. These things really belong between grown-ups, right? These are not things that kids need to hear or think about, whether they're true or not. An alienator may also prevent a child from seeing or talking to the other parent. They may tell the child that the other parent is not interested in seeing them or is busy. An alienator may also plan tempting activities during the other parent's custody. For example, I know you're supposed to be at your mom's this weekend, but I was thinking it's the perfect weekend to invite your friends for a sleepover or to have a birthday party. What would you like to do? Yeah, I know. Infuriating, right? You can tell that's totally manipulating the child. And honestly, to me, it's the kind of thing that really shows that the child is not being put first. And really, the issue of the child not being put first is at the crux of parental alienation. It is when one parent puts their own anger, their own emotions, their own needs above what is best for the children in trying to turn the child against the other parent. It's really hard to see, and it's really hard, for step parents to be a part of. So continuing with some of these examples, a parent that is an alienator may bend or loosely interpret or break custody guidelines or refuse to compromise on custody. For example, if one parent's birthday falls on a day when the other parent has custody and that parent is an alienator, they may refuse to let the child go to birthday dinner when the parent asks. Secrecy can be a thing. And this can happen in a number of different ways. It's, everything from keeping medical records, report cards, doctor's visits, under wraps from the other parent. It can also be, keeping information about the child's friends from the other parent. If you think about it, If one parent knows all your friends, knows what they like and what they want to do, that's probably the parent you want to talk to about stuff, right? And related to that, there may be gossip going on, right? The alienator may ask the child about the other parent's personal life and a lot more. And that can then kind of be a subject of gossip. Like, oh, your mom has a new boyfriend. What's he like? I wonder how long that'll last. She had 4 boyfriends in the year you were in kindergarten and we were still married, Things like that. That's not helpful for a child. And again, if you think about it, that's putting the parent's interests above the child's interests in trying to change their emotions towards their other parent. There can also be like blatant misinformation or seeds of doubt planted in the child about the other parent or step-parent even. For example, and this is a case that happened to someone that I know, if mom says to a child, honey, if your stepmom ever makes you feel uncomfortable, you can come talk to me. Well, in this case, stepmom had been nothing but kind to the child and they had a great relationship. But what that did was cause the child to look for things that simply aren't there. The alienating parent may also be controlling. They may try to monitor all interactions that the child has with their other parent, monitoring text messages and phone calls and things like that. They may also compare the other parent to their new partner. This could, take the form of hearing that, their stepdad loves them more than their dad. They may be told that their stepdad will adopt them and give them a new last name. And, as I said, alienation has a truly, truly horrible impact on kids. First of all, when you're criticizing the other child's parent, that is 50% of the child's DNA. So it makes the child feel like you are criticizing them, which, if you think about it, that's a horrible burden for a child to bear. There's actually a 2016 study that looked at the link between kids who had been subject to parental alienation and found that kids who become alienated from one parent may end up having more anger issues that can go on for years and years. They may have more feelings of neglect because they're caught in the middle of their parents' fights. And really, if their parents are so caught up in fighting and using the kids to fight with each other, then, the kids clearly pick up on the fact that their needs are not being addressed. The parents are only looking out for their own. And that can cause anxiety and depression that lasts for years. It also sets a terrible example for kids. They can learn these destructive patterns and pass them on to others. They can see things as very black and white. It can dull their sense of empathy for people. It can affect their self-esteem, and they can develop sleep disorders or eating disorders. None of these things are good, right? The bottom line is, this is all very bad for kids. Hey stepmom, do you wish you could unlock the secret to handling all that blended family life throws at you? Let's be real, every family's different and has its own struggles. But if you give me 6 weeks, I will give you the tools you need to love your stepmom life. In just 6 weeks, I will help you learn to deal with your partner's ex with confidence, to understand your role as a stepmom, to learn what it is your stepchildren are really looking for and how to communicate with them, to know that you and your partner are on the same page, and to reduce your daily stress and reclaim time for yourself. The Blended Family Formula is a one-of-a-kind course just for stepmoms, designed to help you learn the skills and the strategies to confidently tackle all of your stepmom challenges. You deserve to live out your purpose as a stepmom, and the people who depend on you deserve to get you at your best. If you are a stepmom wondering how to overcome the overwhelm as you feel like you're failing just a little bit at everything, or if you feel guilty for wanting more, this is an opportunity that I promise you will not want to miss. Head over to thiscustomlife.com/BFF to get on the waitlist now. Now, we're talking about parental alienation syndrome, and you're a stepmom. So, what does this have to do with you other than, maybe watching your spouse go through it? Well, I know it's hard for you to see it happening. So I wanted to talk to you today about kind of what can be done about parental alienation, and especially you as a stepmom. What can you do to help your partner get through a situation that they may be experiencing? So in general, there's no real one-size-fits-all treatment for parental alienation, which is unfortunate. I know it's probably not what you want to hear, but it's true. I mean, part of it is it's not an official diagnosis. And, even if it was to be a medically recognized condition, parental alienation in every case and the circumstances around it are so unique and individual, which is what I see with stepmoms that I work with that are going through this. Every situation's truly unique. So there's really not a silver bullet answer that fits every situation for parental alienation. And that can make it really hard for you to deal with because you see these things happening with your partner, your spouse. You see, potentially lies being told about them or behavior directed at them from the children that has been manipulated, and it's really difficult. So, in some situations, you can seek what's called reunification therapy that aims to do exactly what it says, reunite the child with the parent that has been alienated, and that can help. However, it gets tricky if the child doesn't want to go to reunification therapy. If you get a court order to force them, or, if you just force them, it could make things worse. Or if they see it as sort of a punishment, it could cause lasting harm. Now, I'm not saying the child gets to decide whether they go to therapy or not, but you have to kind of navigate that situation. And honestly, the legal system really doesn't have the proper training to deal with these kinds of complex mental health situations either. So the best thing you can do, or that your partner can do, is to find a really good therapist, a really good child psychologist, and see if you can get that child into therapy. Whether it's reunification therapy or not, having a third party, a neutral person that the child can talk to can help them sort of make sense out of, the different voices that they're hearing from either side, from the alienated and the alienator. But look, as stepmom, it's not your job to figure this out for your family. This is something that your partner has really got to take the lead on. And what you can do is support them. And there are some specific things that you as a stepmom can do to help support them if they're going through parental alienation. It's hard because, if you're seeing this happen in your blended family, it can cause a lot of emotions for you. I mean, it probably makes you angry. You want to see some kind of justice for your spouse. You see your partner suffering or heartbroken because their children won't talk to them or are always angry at them. And, it's really hard to see someone hurting like that. And you may be suffering too. But there are a few things you can do to help your partner and, help yourself to deal with parental alienation. So I'll walk through these real quick. First of all, remind your partner that what's going on is not their fault. It's not happening because they're a bad parent. It's not them at all. It's because there's manipulation going on in the other house from the other parent. Encourage them to stay calm and not to make mistakes. And by mistakes, I mean anything that could exacerbate or reinforce whatever's being said about them. If they're being characterized as angry, or, your mom is just always angry and, she's just going to fuss at you about anything you say or do. Well, then next time the child is, with mom, she probably ought to make maybe an extra effort to stay calm. She may not ever get angry in the first place. That may be a total lie. But if she does get real angry, that's going to reinforce what's being said about her. Now, of course, I know and that parents get angry. Kids get angry, right? I'm not saying to not express emotion or, not say something to the child if they've done something that there need to be consequences for. I'm just saying to keep in mind what's been said about them and, try not to do things that may reinforce that to the kids. And I know that that's really hard. So the next thing I would suggest is if there's something going on that crosses the legal line with any of this, hire an attorney. Don't try to fight it out yourselves. Let the attorneys handle it. And next, and I've touched on this before, is look for therapy or coaching to help. And obviously we've talked about reunification therapy, and that can be a very good thing for your spouse and the child. But look for therapy for your spouse to deal with the emotions that they're going through and the heartbreak that they're dealing with, with this going on with their kids. Look for therapy or coaching for yourself. These are heavy issues, and it just never hurts to have somebody outside the family to talk to about it and to try and figure out how to tread some of these really complicated emotions, both with the child, but, with your spouse and with you. And more than anything, encourage them not to give up. It is so easy to get frustrated and just say, well, my child's being a jerk, or my child has cut me off, and, I just can't do anything else, and I'm just going to wait for them to come around. Don't do that. Your spouse should continue to reach out to the child on a regular basis. The communication may be bad. They may not hear anything back from the child. The child may be angry or throw nasty, untrue things their way. They should not give up. And, if the child has cut off contact completely, send a regular text, send cards. If you feel like, if the child is old enough and is blocking you from text, or blocking your spouse from text, or, won't be receptive to cards, one idea is to get a box together and talk to your spouse about this. But anytime you guys want to, say something to the child, write a note and put it in the box. Anytime the child's birthday or a holiday comes up, if you are not going to be able to see them, if the parental alienation has resulted in, the relationship kind of being frozen out, put a gift in the box, put a note in the box, or put a card in the box, and just keep that, because at some point that child may come back around. And I think it's important for you and your spouse to be able to say, you did everything to try and reestablish contact, but when that, contact wasn't accepted, you still thought about the child. You still loved the child. Your spouse still loved the child. And you've got this box of stuff that you can give them at some point so that they can see all the times that they were thought of and that they were loved. Because look, the fact is, in parental alienation cases, oftentimes your spouse needs to play the long game. Your spouse really needs to, be patient, not give up, and hope that as the child ages and gets older, that they'll realize that, they never gave up on them and that they'll come back around. And I'll tell you one other thing that you can do to help the situation if the child has not cut off contact, but if things are, pretty tough. If you have a good relationship with the child, you can talk to them. Do not, under any circumstances, disparage the other parent for any alienation that may be happening. Kids do not have the mental capacity to, separate all of that stuff and to deal with all of that. Do not disparage the other parent under any circumstances. But, you can say that you're sorry their parents don't get along and that you're there to listen if they want to talk. You can be a shoulder for them. As a stepmom, you're in a really tough spot on parental alienation. It's really hard and it's really complicated, and it's something that can go on for years. And there's not a solid, easy to implement solution for you. I wish I had one. But you can serve as a really great support system for your partner and for their kids if this is going on in your family. And I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you and your partner to, find a coach, find a therapist, find someone to talk to as you navigate this complicated situation. So that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining me on this really difficult topic. If you're dealing with parental alienation or you suspect that you are, I hope you'll consider joining my private Facebook group just for stepmoms. It's the same name as this podcast, the Stepmom Diaries. And it's a great network of other stepmoms with me in the group. And, you can post questions, comments, things that are going on in your life. But don't hesitate, to join the group or to, reach out and DM me on social media if you are looking for some help. I've got a lot of tools and resources for you. So thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.